Much of our future depends on the way we use this medium of communication, for its influence on thinking and action is tremendous. Here in the control rooms sit the men who, at the touch of a button, control the picture going to our home, where we, at the touch of a button, select from a variety of programs. For in a few short years, television has become one of the greatest merchandising media. How is all this done? And because your eye has a persistence of vision, this series of pictures gives the illusion of movement.
I told you to turn off your TV, but you didn't listen to me. Thanks to you, you are now letting Apple into my world.
Are you ready to be consumed by nightmares for the rest of the night? Well folks, it's time for a mixture of classic anthologies and stuff that you didn't expect to be horrifying, but it kept me up last night. So have you ever heard of Mr. Meaty? Yeah, I didn't know this show existed before last year, and I had to do a solid hour of research at the time before I could wrap my head around the fact that this was indeed a very real show that once aired on TV and not some fun substance-fueled fever dream. So this was just like a sitcom. It was created by a couple of Canucks, focuses on two lazy characters, Josh Redgrove and Parker Dinkelman. Yeah, I know. They work at a fast food restaurant called Mr. Meaty. It's at a shopping mall, and they get into some really weird situations. It's set in the fictional town of Scotchboro. Yeah, it's based on Scarborough. And it was like originally just 17 little shorts. And it aired starting in 2005, so it was during that really niche time in history when like whatever went on TV, it went on TV, it happened, and it was wild. And similar to a lot of shows of the early 2000s, it's like a claymation puppet fever dream. And one of the characters, Josh, yeah, it's been described visually as resembling the ghost of a prolapsed rear end. There was an episode that featured people munching. In a different episode, one girl's nose falls off only to be replaced by meat, but the worst reviewed episode period is the tapeworm one. It began with one of the characters eating meat that shouldn't be consumed. Eventually we get a visual of the tapeworm coming out of the puppet's mouth, and the first time I saw a screen grab of that, I almost hurled up my breakfast. Somebody somewhere thought this was appropriate television for developing minds. Eventually, they get the thing out, and it looks like a spinal cord. And then the episode ends with a crocodile hunter character who comes in and eats the worm. Yep, he eats this tapeworm that's just been hanging out in another character's body, and we're gonna move on before I upchuck again. Okay everybody, hands up. Who grew up obsessively reading anything from R.L. Stine in the corner of the library? So I find this next show to be, dare I say it, underrated, even though I know that's an overused phrase, but bear with me. So R.L. Stine's The Haunting Hour aired from 2010 until 2014. It had 76 episodes, and while there's a number of filler episodes, the first two seasons had some gems that will forever haunt my brain. So in the first season, there are some very effectively weird scenarios. Let's see, Fear Never Knocks and its creepy stranger. Like, it's just a threatening embodiment of fear itself. The Black Mask, which effectively introduces its audience to that old familiar theme of it wasn't a vision of the past, it was the future. And the show should be given credit for its very ambitious installments. Let's see, Afraid of Clowns, like that one was so Lovecraftian in nature, which like, oh my gosh. Wrong Numbers, where people learn the perils of messing with curses. And the two-part reinvention of the classic urban legend in Scary Mary. Like all of these are classic tropes for a reason, and they're done well. But then season 2 kicks everything up a notch because the show's producers are like, you know what, maybe let's have the occasional unhappy ending. Maybe let's take out some main characters. Why not? Now, it was never a violent end of life, but it was always done very like, oh, like the shock was there. The show had some bite. And then the writers were like, you know what? Let's take some narrative risks. And everybody was like, yeah, you know what? Go nuts. Let's see, what's a good episode to reference? Ooh, Flight. So there's a character on his first nervous airplane flight, and he befriends a man targeted by the Grim Reaper, with a last line of the episode that's gonna haunt anybody seeing it for the first time. I'm not gonna spoil it, but if you know it, write it in the comments. Let's see, episodes like Sick and Brush with Destiny really bring to life the oh-so-horrifying themes of paranoia and rubber reality. Stage Fright charts a disastrous attempt at a school musical, which Hansel and Gretel, already kind of scary, only to end on another deliciously witchy and perfect line. Like that last line is so crucial, folks. And then it has a Halloween episode, because a scary show has to have a Halloween episode, Pumpkinhead. And the oddly menacing and very haunting. The whole could easily have passed as an episode of Tales from the Darkside back in the day. Yeah, we're gonna get to that later, don't worry folks. And Mascot, it really succeeds at being like a lost episode. You see these two students intent on replacing their bizarre and kind of weird sports mascot called Big Yellow, only to find out it's not as easy as it may seem. But I think the episode everybody and their mother talks about all the time is Scarecrow. And there was one comment on a YouTube re-upload that put it the best. This is the best episode of the entire show and probably one of the best pieces of horror anybody has ever seen, especially when you get that horrible premonition feeling. The cold like the grave, but not like DEATH or life. Like, it's not any like jump scare situation. It's not like a gross out horror. There's no like cheap thrills, no attacks. It's just silence. Like, it's creepy. It's like that perfect level of psychological horror that really plays on your fear of nothingness and how uncomfortable the fragility of our existence makes us. Oh, and also, it had an alternate ending. Like, it's so good. Okay, I think you'd all rip me to shreds if I didn't at least mention the Twilight Zone today. So this aired from 1959 to 1964, and it's a classic anthology series for a reason. It's got thought-provoking science fiction, it's got fantasy, it's got horror, you name it, it's got it. It has inspired so many imitators, like some of the shows I've talked about already. But none have matched its mix of clever twists, social commentary, and chilling suspense. Like, those twists burrowed into my brain, and I know it's made so many people question their perceptions or assumptions of others in the world around you. Look, if we're gonna contemplate maybe the subjectivity of beauty, eye of the beholder, or questioning what it means to be alien in The Invaders, a lot of these stories have left people gasping because that final reveal, oh, so good. Now, not every episode ended with a twist, and while they almost always had a sci-fi or supernatural theme, they're rooted in themes about the human condition, the fears and desires that are buried deep into our lizard brains that are really gonna haunt us until the end of time. It's a must-watch for anybody, and it's relevant to this day for a reason. I know, it's hard to believe that it's already been more than 60 years since Rod Serling first showed up in black and white on television screens everywhere and introduced us to a sea of imaginative tales that are not bound by time or space or the established laws of nature. Tales from the Darkside was another horror anthology that aired from 1983 to 1988, and oh my gosh, talk about something being seared into my brain. Like, that intro, I feel like having great intros to shows it's almost a lost art in today's day and age. But this one, it stands out. Dare I say it, it has passed the test of time. Although lacking the higher production quality and more graphic content of similar shows you might enjoy, this one, I think, more than made up for it with its sheer creepiness, and in a way, its more subtle, low-key nature. I think that made it more frightening. It really had that low-budget, simplistic charm that takes you back to a bygone era. And so many of the episodes are like an 80s time capsule if you're really craving that. If we want to talk about notable episodes, Effect and Cause was definitely a standout. It starts off like a forgotten sitcom with whimsical fun, and then slowly descends into nightmarish madness, with imagery that's straight out of a fever dream hallucination. When we finally get the plot twist, it's much more disturbing than I could have ever imagined, and then they end it with a bang. Like, this style of storytelling was so well done. And our last show for today, you probably never heard about it. It's actually considered partially lost media. Beginning to air in 1999, it was called Pirates, and it only lasted a single season, and you're about to see why. Now, this is a show that had puppets, animatronics, and full-body costumes. So this show aired on Treehouse TV in Canada, and it starts off similar to other shows. You saw a bedroom, you had sleeping humans, it focuses on a storybook because it's going to tell you a story. And then you get the theme song. You're greeted by a singing rat mascot, and you get these pirate folks whose faces are somewhere between a human and a rag doll. They're singing about no rules, no naps, no shoes, and you can't forget the friendly flying CGI whale that totally blends into the otherwise three-dimensional set. But it's the singing mouths on the mascot faces that look almost like marionettes, and it's just so unsettling. And then, you know what, we've got some side characters, and you know what? I know what we need. A talking xylophone with spring eyes. I get the concept, but it just looks like a craft gone wrong. And that's all, folks. I've been Alexa, your resident ooky spooky girly, and this has been my last video, so thanks for hanging out with me.